The head of the Phoenix Police Union says their staffing is at dangerously low levels. We'll talk with them this week. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people I've been away.
Ken Crane is the head of the Phoenix Police Union. He'll join us here in just a few moments, but we start each show off with something we call The Sweep. It's sponsored by my good friends at Zero Res Carpet and Tile Cleaning. Donald Trump made big news this week, as he has, with Twitter. Now, I love what Donald Trump has been doing with his transition. He was not my first choice for president, but I've got to tell you, he has acted very presidential, with the exception of Twitter, so far. He took to Twitter this week and said that the Boeing deal, the company Boeing, who is building 2 new Air Force Ones to the tune of $4 billion, is kind of bilking the American public, and he said, let's cancel the deal. That's what he said on Twitter. He was asked about that tweet. Here's what he said.
You tweeted this morning about canceling the contract for the new Air Force One. Is that something you're serious about trying to do?
Well, the plane is totally out of control. It's going to be over $4 billion. It's for Air Force One program. And I think it's ridiculous. I think Boeing is doing a little bit of a number. We want Boeing to make a lot of money, but not that much money.
All right, so in the following days, what he has said is that's just way too much money for a couple of airplanes. Boeing stock dipped right after this happened. Their stock went down, but it went back up to normal levels. But here's the president of the United States, soon to be anyway, making statements. He's got to realize, I just think that saying things like that on Twitter, you've got to realize you are now the president of the United States. You're not just hosting a game show anymore. He has done so many presidential things, choosing his cabinet wisely, seeking counsel, the things that he said in his victory speech. If he stayed off Twitter, this would be a pretty good transition so far. Pizzagate is what they're calling the next item. This was a story that started out as a fake news story. Somebody took something that was real and turned it into something not real. And they said that Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, and this guy that owned a pizza joint called Cosmic Ping Pong or something was running a sex ring out of the basement of the pizzeria. So a guy in North Carolina, who obviously has got issues, took his gun and drove from North Carolina to Washington, D.C. to confront this situation. He was arrested and taken away. But it has now gone this fake news thing around the country that's kind of ridiculous. On the local front, the Phoenix Union High School District, which is a large district, made an official statement the other day saying it doesn't matter what the federal laws say, they will be a safe place for dreamers, the DREAM Act kids, the DACA kids, the Deferred Action kids. Now, they are not going to get deported. It's not going to happen. Donald Trump said almost as much. But for the Phoenix Union High School District to say they would defy federal law is just ridiculous. And finally, one of the big news stories, obviously this past week on December 7th, was the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor and the attacks there. Our own Senator John McCain from Arizona had some comments of his childhood when his father was an admiral. Watch this.
One of my earliest memories, I was 5 years old, playing in the front yard of our family's home in New London, Connecticut. A black sedan pulled up in front of the house. A Navy officer in uniform rolled down the window and shouted at my father that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor.
John McCain obviously went on to serve in the Navy himself. He was a pilot. We know his story as being a prisoner of war. But for him to reflect on his childhood and watching his father go off for the next 4 years plus and fight in World War II, one of the things that is so disheartening about this, the 75th anniversary, is we have lost so many from that greatest generation of World War II survivors and the people that fought in World War II, that we're losing them at such an alarming rate. Here in the state of Arizona, we have Rosie the Riveter clubs. There's one in Sun City, Arizona, is the biggest in the country. These are the women that went to work in the factories while the men went to fight the war. We don't have to deal with that in the wars now. Now, if we aren't watching the news, we may not even think about the wars we're in. Coming up in a couple of moments, Ken Crane joins me for a 2-segment interview about staffing on the Phoenix Police Department and what he believes gotten to be dangerously low levels, and I agree with him. So you're going to want to stick around for that. We're going to get to that here in just a couple of moments. But let me first talk to you about my friends at Zero Res. When you want to get your carpets clean this holiday season, Zero res is the only way to go. It's called empowered water. That's their product. Change the alkaline level of the water, and it works just like soaps and chemicals do without the harsh effects of soaps or chemicals. Your carpets dry faster. They stay cleaner longer. They've expanded their staff. So that means anytime you need your carpets cleaned, after Thanksgiving, of course, or before the big parties, they will be available. They're the best in the business at what they do. They're the ones I trust. They're the ones you should trust as well. We'll be back here in just a moment with Ken Crane. Everyone's aware what a big supporter of law enforcement I am. I come from a law enforcement family, and here in Phoenix, where we are, the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association is the union that represents the street cops. Joining me is Ken Crane, the president of P.L.E.A. First of all, thanks for being on the show again.
Well, thanks for having us on, Mike. It's a real pleasure, and it's an important topic to talk about today.
This has been something I've talked about for quite a while with the hiring freeze in Phoenix, with them not adding officers. At some point, it becomes critical where it gets dangerous. You had a press conference this week, and you were asking the community to get involved. What led you to that, and where are we when it comes to staffing with Phoenix Police?
Well, we're at what I would call crisis staffing levels, and it's not just what I call it. We have had PD managers refer to it as that, so it's not necessarily my words, although I do agree with that premise. In October of 2008, we were at a total of 3,388 sworn. It was our high on the department for staffing, but what followed was a 6-year hiatus on hiring. And what's critical to talk about, Mike, on that 6-year hiatus is we didn't even try to keep up by hiring for attrition, people retiring and going out the door, which we should have been doing, but they didn't. And so in February of 2015, we started hiring again, and we were at that time, we were at 2,722 officers. So that was a net deficit of 616. Now, in that 6-year period, we in PD management had been sounding the warning bells. In my press conference, I used the analogy of the Titanic. But we had been sounding the warning bells. I can remember at city council meetings where I had got up and spoken and given little speeches about staffing and how bad it's getting. Past P.L.E.A. President Joe Kluwer had done that. One of our former board members, Will Buvadas, who's the chief negotiator, had also spoken out about it. And I know PD managers were probably at least talking, maybe not publicly, but at least over with the city, had also been talking about the need to hire. So that leads us to where we're at today. So here's the alarming thing. Since 2015, we were told by the department we've hired 447. So that gets us up to, check my figures here, they said our current level is 2,722. So if you take the 2722 and bounce it off the number we were at before we started hiring in 2015, that's a 50-person deficit. That is not good.
So you're even lower, even though you're hiring. That was the thing, is that they made the big announcement in the city that they were hiring all these police officers. And I mentioned on the radio show, you've got to be careful, because that's barely keeping up with the number of officers that are leaving, whether it's through retirement or medical reasons or going to another agency or whatever reason they're leaving, that you're not gaining anything. As a matter of fact, what you're losing is experience. Experienced officers are leaving the agency, and you're bringing in inexperienced officers that need to be, 2 years of training before they're really up to speed?
Yeah, that's correct, Mike. And I'll tell you, it takes, for a brand new officer, it takes literally a year from the time they start the hiring process to get them out as what we call a minimally competent solo capable officer. So you got a couple of months in the hiring process, 5 months of academy, 4 months of field training where you're what we call an OIT or an OIT, officer in training, and you're paired up with a FTO, a mentor who is evaluating and training you every day. And then if you get through FTO, you're kicked loose and you're blessed as being solo capable. Now you can go sign out a police car and go shag radio calls. But even then, you're a year on. You're a very green officer. So it takes a couple of years to really get up to speed and functional. I mean, we count those officers as being, good, viable street officers, but it takes that long to get them through the pipeline.
So when you have the minimum, and I know, I've mentioned the phrase that you've told me, the Beats +1 minimum staffing level, are you meeting that minimum level with the squads on patrol in the city of Phoenix?
No, we're not, and we haven't for the last couple of years, and that's where I think we've been in crisis, because we got those text messages in the office. Hey, 3 guys in briefing tonight. Our squad's rolling out with 3 tonight. Four guys in briefing. Some of these squads are supposed to have maybe 7 or 8 guys on them. We've got squad areas in Maryville that are so busy based on the computer models that we should technically have a 22-man squad just based on calls for service. But that they may be rolling with 6, 7, 8-man squad, which sounds good, but when you look at the saturation and the calls for service, they're getting their butts kicked.
And see, and I don't want to, I'm not someone that is looking to make people paranoid or scare people for no reason. But you take young officers and then a squad of 3 that should be a squad of 7 or 8. We're setting people up for failure, aren't we?
Absolutely we are. And what's even more scary is we're in some of the most dangerous times in law enforcement in America than we've ever seen in the last 2.5 years. All you got to do is watch the news. Attacks on cops, ambushes on cops. Very, very deadly to be a cop right now. And so when you're running understaffed, what's happening is you've got officers, because I've said this before, our cops are alpha males and females with guns. They're trained to run to the fight. It's not in our nature and DNA to stand down when we need a backup. It's like, well, I'll go anyway. So we got guys going into emergency calls of domestic violences, aggravated assaults in progress, armed robberies just occurred. Very dangerous calls, and they're blind calling for a backup and they don't have an answer because everybody's tied up. And they're going, I'll go anyway. All right, and that's the scary part, is you got officers rolling on the calls without backups. And here's the other downside. The real losers in this equation are the citizens of Phoenix.
See, that's the question, and that's the next thing I want to get to, because we have to take a quick break. But I want to talk about that part of it too. It's not just the, and it is the danger, but it's also the service and the quality of service that the citizens are getting in the city.
Absolutely.
We're going to be back in a minute with Ken Crane, talk about the dangers of the staffing level in the city of Phoenix, and for the city of Phoenix residents, are they getting the police department that they pay for and that they deserve? We'll be back. We are talking public safety, the people that provided the police agencies. The biggest city in Arizona is Phoenix, 5th largest city in the country, and joining me is Ken Crane. We were talking before we came back and right as we ended this last segment about the citizens of Phoenix and the police agency that they actually deserve and have paid for. In your mind, where we are right now is not where we should be. Where should we be? How many officers should the city of Phoenix have on duty and in that agency to be what they need to be?
Well, and the way they look at that from a national model, Mike, is they look at it as far as police officers per 1,000 citizens. It's a ratio. Right now in the city of Phoenix, we've got about 1.8 police officers per 1,000 citizens. If we were to get back up to our 2008 staffing level of 3388, that would put us at 2.2 officers per 1,000. Now, a lot of the studies and modeling and staffing on police staffing nationwide, the Bureau of Justice and International Association of Chiefs of Police says that usually a city with 250,000 residents or more should have 2.5 officers per 1,000. So if we staffed Phoenix, according to what the recommended staffing levels are at 2.5, we would have 4,250 sworn officers. Wow. That would be command level all the way down.
Right.
Okay, but 4,250 if you do the 2.5. Even getting back to 2.0 would be really nice, but that's not what they want to get back to. They want to get back to 3125, okay? And so that would bring us up to, I don't know, maybe just slightly above 1.8.
So how do you recruit new officers to the agency if the feeling is the city isn't backing up and making sure the officers have what they need, which would be not just equipment, but backup when they need it?
Well, recruiting is a really interesting thing. I've talked to some people from our Employment Services Bureau, some detectives that do that stuff, background investigators, recruiters. They feel like they're handcuffed. They feel like the brakes are being put on. They said, we're not allowed to go out of state and recruit. So we show up at job fairs, we're competing with Tempe, Mesa, Scottsdale, DPS, MCSO. We're all fishing out of the same pool. if you send your recruiting teams out of state, go hit Fort Hood, largest military installation in the country. There's constantly people out processing. Those are great police candidates looking for work. You could go out there and pre-test at places like that. You could hit some of these other police agencies around the country. People are bailing out of Dallas like crazy. Go recruit in Dallas. The bodies are there. Maybe we fished out our lake in Arizona, but you got to kind of unleash the hounds and get aggressive about hiring. But it all comes down to this: money. And the mayor and council and the city manager are trying to flatline the budget. It's salary savings is what it is.
So then why would they, having the same data that you've given them, why would they say Phoenix is safe enough with the number of officers we have?
Well, it's interesting because after we had our press conference, Ed Zucker came out and gave a little press statement and said, there is no crisis. Well, I would submit to you this. When you have to start internally cannibalizing your police department and strip 169 or 8 detectives and patrol specialty people out of very essential details along with 24 sergeants and say, you got to go man the front lines, that's a crisis.
And that's when crime begins to tick up, because you're not preventing crime. You are now just responding to calls for service.
Well, the magic number we're trying to get up to is, let me see, it's like 1,095 or 96 officers. That's what we're trying to get the patrol force up to. That is being described as we're trying to get to crisis staffing levels in patrol. Now, here's the other thing. This is a rob Peter to pay Paul scheme. So what happens is you strip all these people out of your back end infrastructure, move them to the front. Maybe we cut overtime on the front end, but guess who now gets the overtime? You shifted the overtime burden to the detective details that have to work to catch up to manage their caseloads and aren't going to be able to keep up because they're going to be catching double and triple the cases now, because now we have an expanded patrol force to generate those cases to send to them. It is an evil cycle. And you have to get ahead of this hiring curve. You have to hire for attrition. You can't just hire. Nowakowski put out a press release. Oh, we've hired 300, we're going to hire 200 more, and the chief's doing all blah, blah, blah. And it's all these glittering platitudes that mean nothing but sound good in a media soundbite to the citizens, because the citizens are in the dark and they don't know the right questions to ask, so it sounds good.
So people need to, if you live in the city of Phoenix like I do, reach out to your city council members, make your voices heard. Go to the P.L.E.A website, which we'll make sure is up on the screen for you, and you can see some information about what's going on. This is not crying wolf. This is dangerous levels. That's an already dangerous job. We're going to stay on this, and I hope you'll come back. We're out of time in this segment, but I would love for you to come back sometime and give us an update on this.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having us. Thanks for helping get the word out. It means a lot to us.
All right, we'll be back. Welcome back. It's time for one of my favorite parts of the show. We call it From Arizona for America. It's our way to congratulate and thank the fine Arizona men and women who have recently graduated from boot camp and are now serving in our country's military. So please join me in honoring Airman Trevor Williams from Mesa High School in Mesa, Airman Isaac Blaine, also from Mesa High School, and Airman Logan Drews from Mountain Ridge High School in Glendale. For a list of more of our friends and neighbors that are from Arizona for America, go to the Mike Broomhead page at aztv.com. We'll be back in a minute with Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. Don't go away. All right, it's time for the best part of the show. We call it Broomhead's Best. This week, it's Larry Fitzgerald. He wins the Walter Payton Award for NFL Man of the Year, and there's not a more deserving person in the NFL. How lucky are we to have leaders like we do in Arizona sports? Larry Fitzgerald is one of the most class acts in all of sports right here in Arizona as a leader on the Cardinals, and absolutely deserves to be Broomhead's Best. Congratulations, Larry, on a well-deserved award. Next, we do this. It's called hashtag this. We're calling it hashtag Merry Christmas. Not only did this woman find her ex-boyfriend, who's now married, on his front lawn setting up his Christmas lights. She's in her SUV, Christmas music blaring, screaming Merry Christmas as she drives through his yard 3 or 4 times trying to run him over. Runs over the decorations, runs over the bushes, damages her car. He hides behind a tree. And this was Pennsylvania, not my home state of Florida, as shocking as that sounds. That's this week's #this. We'll be back in just a moment to close out the show. Don't go away. I want to thank Ken Crane from the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association for joining us and giving us some of those statistics. Now, those are not just numbers, those are people. First of all, being a police officer is a dangerous job. I come from a law enforcement family. I make no apologies for being as pro-law enforcement as I am. But I'm also a Phoenician. I live in the city of Phoenix, and I have for almost 21 years. I love where I live. It's a safe city, it's a clean city, it's a beautiful city, and I want it to stay that way. Police departments need to be fully funded and fully staffed. And when the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association is forced into the public to call out the city for not having enough cops on the street, I think we should respond. If you live in Phoenix, make your voice heard. We deserve a police department that responds to calls, where officers are safe, fully staffed, and fully equipped. If that's the city you want to live in, you should let your council member know that. We are the voting public. We are the taxpayers. Let your voice be heard. We'll be back next week with another show. We appreciate you joining us for this one. Have a great week, everyone, from everybody at the Mike Broomhead Show. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.